Good afternoon. At the end of the service, and I'll repeat it at the end of the service, I hope I remember, we want everyone with a Hawaiian shirt on to come up front and we're going to take a picture. And I do have one other one in my office, so if you want to grab that, you can join the picture. But sometimes when we gather to say goodbye, we do so overwhelmed with grief. Sometimes death takes us completely by surprise, catches us off guard. Today is a little different. Peter had struggled for some time, and his death brought an end to that. Still, we gather as people whose hearts have a big hole in them, a hole that only Peter could fill. Now, unlike most of you, I didn't know Peter all that well. We chatted a few times over the years, greeted one another at funerals. But I do remember about 21 years ago, right after I started, Peter was living right over there. And I went out to introduce myself to him, and Peter made it clear that he was not a churchy person. And he scolded me it would be best if I didn't try to get him to come. Now, the truth is, I couldn't care less if you come to church or not, especially a person like that. But then almost prophetically he said, "They'll have to bring me in a casket if I'm going to go to your church." He was almost prescient, wasn't he? It was not a casket, but an urn. Like I said, I didn't know him all that well, but a few days ago I met with Sally and her kids and other family members, and I got a real sense of the person you knew as the bear. And I loved listening to the stories, and I really left knowing that I had missed an opportunity to get to know someone a little better. Now, like a lot of men, Peter was better at showing his love than he was at talking about it. But he did love to do special things for the people that meant the world to him. Talk can be cheap, too easy. So remember, maybe even today, to show the people you love that you love them. And from a distance, I've been told by more than a few of you that at times he could be a real jerk. But then you quickly would add, always in an endearing way. But he did love to push your buttons, didn't he? But when you pushed back, when you didn't take any flack from him, he respected you all the more. And then maybe tomorrow morning or sometime next week, go out to breakfast in his memory. If you go to Water Street Cafe, order the number 1. Or if you're dining at Lakeside, simply tell him you want the Peter. And when you see someone wearing a stupid hat, someone should have worn a stupid hat today. Let a big smile fill your face and a memory of Peter donning one of his crazy hats. And every time you gather in a cigar-filled room to play a game of poker, maybe keep a chair empty in his memory. And remember what a lucky son of a gun he always was. And then know, like he did, how to have a good time. But also give back the way he did. Serve your country. Volunteer with the fire department. Help out at the cemetery. So do what he did. Invest in your community. So we come today to do a few things. Certainly to give voice to our sorrow and sadness, to say this really sucks. But we also come to muster up the courage to celebrate a remarkable person whose life touched you in so many ways over the years. And although Peter's life was far shorter than any of us would have wished, we know a good life isn't measured by how long we live, but by how well we live, by how many people are touched by our life. So now join me in a word of prayer. Once again, we have been beckoned to this place that will hold us and hold the pain of our hearts. We come here because it is important to be among people who knew and loved Peter. In this time together, may the stories and memories we share, may all of these bring some comfort and peace. And may our time today be seasoned with lots of laughter. May we all be inspired to live our lives in a way that is true to our values, true to what we deem most important. And may our days be spent pursuing things worthy of our allegiance, that will help nudge the world in a positive way. So may our words be a tribute to Peter Richard Sawyer, whose life will not be forgotten and whose memory will be cherished and celebrated for years to come. Amen. And then Sally picked out John 14, verses 1 through 4. Believe in God, believe also in me. For in my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may also be. And then join me in a unison reading of the 23rd Psalm, which is printed in your bulletin. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
There are places I remember all my life, though some have changed, some forever, not for better. Some have gone, and some remain. All these places had their moments with lovers and friends I still can recall. Some are dead and some are living. In my life, I've loved them all. But of all these friends and lovers, there is no one compares with you. And these memories lose their meaning when I think of love as something new. Though I know I'll never lose affection for people and things that went before. I know I'll often stop and think about them. In my life, I love you more. Though I know I'll never lose affection for people and things that went before. I know I'll often stop and think about them. In my life, I love you more. In my life, I love you more.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for coming out to remember and honor Uncle Bear. Not that I mind, and I'm actually honored to do so, but here I am again in front of you talking about a member of the Sawyer family who has passed on. Being the eldest of the grandchildren, I suppose it is my duty to do so. But also being the eldest means that probably I'll be the first one to go. And obviously I will not be able to read then, so one of you will have to step up. Back to Uncle Bear. Monica, my wonderful wife, and I were talking the other day about Uncle Bear and how he lived his life. Both Monica's dad and Uncle Bear were, unfortunately, witnesses to the horrors of war. Hans in World War II and Uncle Bear in Vietnam. Neither talked much at all about their experiences, but because of what they had to endure, they lived their lives unapologetically. Not in a self-centered way, mind you. It's just that they knew what they wanted to do and knew what made them happy and set out to do so. I know of only one story from Vietnam. My dad told me about it the other day on the way to recycling. My dad loves to recycle. Uncle Bear was a canine handler on an Air Force base in Vietnam. One night on patrol of the base, they heard rustling in the bushes. So what did the 19-year-olds do? They opened fire and unloaded their weapons into the bushes to fight off the enemy. Come morning, they went to look for the enemy. But instead of Viet Cong, they discovered they killed a wild pig. Uncle Bear loved that story. It figures that is the one he liked to share. He loved to laugh at the ridiculousness of life. To say that Uncle Bear lived his life to the fullest is an understatement. He loved to be surrounded by his friends and especially his family. Much like his father, he loved getting the entire family together. Sally, Pepper and Sammy, my dad and mom, my brother Jim, Aunt Nancy, and Uncle Pete, or as Pete nicknamed him, Repeat. As you'll find out probably throughout these things, my uncle loved nicknames. And of course, my grandparents were there as well. We spent, I think, probably the first 24 so years of our life, every Christmas together. I can speak for Jim and Pepper and Sammy in that we were more than cousins. We were like brothers and sisters. We spent so much time together. I know that the four of us would agree that spending Christmas together in the playroom are some of the fondest memories of our lives. Being a Saurian means that spending time with family comes first, even when it's not always easy. Case in point, as you know, for much of our lives, we own the dairy bar. And you also may know that running a family business is not always easy. This was especially true when Jorge and Peaches, those were code names given by employees to George and my Uncle Pete. So when Jorge and Peaches were on the warpath, they were given a heads up on that. We had our fair share of arguments, but at the end of the day, we were still family. So after a very busy, hot, and stressful summer, spending nearly 80 hours a week together, what did we do at the end of the year? Did we go on vacation, run away from each other? No, we did not. Instead, we all headed over to Camp Island, our camp. Please refer to my eulogy from my grandmother regarding the creative names of the islands on the lake. And we spent the entire weekend together. No TV, no electricity, no running water. It's no small wonder that it didn't turn into Lord of the Flies or an episode of Survivor. But that's where Uncle Bear was most happy, being surrounded by his family, cooking for us. That was great. But we survived those trips to the island. We were and still are a strong family and survived our solitude out on the island. I think a sign of a good, strong family is where its members end up in adulthood. Everyone that I've mentioned did not go far and live in either Laconia or Guilford. I guess we still need each other. Not a bad thing. Uncle Bear was such a big part of my life. Besides spending Christmases and weekends over at camp, I spent time working with him and for him, obviously at the dairy bar and at the kitchen up at Gunstock. I spent a lot of time with him doing what he truly loved, as well as gambling. Poker games in the barn after work, Tuesday nights at the Taylor home with Neela, and most recently Thursday nights at Dr. David's, or as he called him, the ringmaster. These were such good times for me. How lucky was I to be able to play cards with my dad and two uncles. Uncle Bear even took me to Las Vegas back in the early 90s. My uncles take their nephews to Vegas. Uncle Bear liked to party, hard. Those of you who knew him during his wild days during the 1960s, 70s, 80s, the 90s, I don't think he slowed down till the turn of the century. But you would be surprised and maybe even disappointed that he behaved himself and didn't get me or him into trouble. If he did, then both of us would have to deal with the Queen, who he nicknamed as my mother. Unfortunately, that did not happen. So I am here today I'm to say to Uncle Bear that I am proud that people still use the nickname you gave me nearly 50 years ago. I will miss you, your nephew, Johnson. Hello, I would like to say some words on behalf of Pepper. It's ironic because Pepper didn't think he could get through this, and I don't know if I can either. I want to thank you all for coming today to honor my dad. I know some of you traveled a very long distance to pay your respects, and I know my dad would have loved seeing all of you together in our brightly colored shirts. My dad was always a funny guy, although some may think his humor wasn't. He loved playing practical jokes on his siblings growing up. This tradition played out as I was growing up too. He loved to come up with nicknames for friends and family. I was lucky, I didn't have a nickname. My given name was Pepper. So I was saved. Well, maybe. My dad was an observer. He would sit back, listen to the conversation, wait for the right moment, and throw his 2 cents in, smirk, and then wait for a reaction. Some of my favorite childhood memories are at the dairy bar in the summers, working in 100 degrees plus temperature, running the grill, conducting a symphony of organized chaos, spending days off at camp on Lake Winnipesaukee. We would head out after work, and him letting me take the wheel at night, pointing out the markers and the landmarks. He made me a better, more aware boater because of his guidance. He really enjoyed the lake and loved boating. A memory I will always cherish is the time I was water skiing. I finally got up on one ski. He would spend hours driving in circles till I finally did it. It was late in the 80s when VHS camcorders were the rage. The video of him with an ear-to-ear smile, with huge thumbs up, staring into the camera, is a memory I will never forget. He was super proud that day. Funny moments would also be on the lake, tubing. He got pure joy when he could whip us tubers off, doing 50 or 60 or so, and we would hit the water hard, but out of breath. He would then ask, who wants to go again? Where some would say no. I was ready to do it again and again. My dad was a drummer, and so am I. My dad would have barn parties right across the street here, and would wake me up, sit me on his lap, and we would play the drums together. Then he would get up, and I would play by myself for a bit as he would sit back proudly. As most of you know, my dad loved breakfast. It was one of my favorite traditions with him. When I was there, he would cheat on his normal breakfast of 2 eggs and wheat toast. He would tell the server, "Son is here, so I can have a little extra today." I always called you son. I couldn't possibly write every memory, and if I did, we would be here for a while. My dad was an incredible person. My dad was my role model. He taught me how to be strong in the face of adversity and never to give up on myself. He led by example with a strong work ethic. He may or may not give the best opinion, but he supported me with my decisions. He never gave a lecture about my mistakes, well, maybe a few times, but instead asked what I learned and how I could do better in the future. His fatherly love for me was so strong that it transcended time and space. Even though he is gone, I know that his love for me will continue to live on in my heart forever. Dad, you are my hero. Well,
My name's Jim Sawyer. I am Uncle Pete's nephew, and Sam asked me to read her words. She didn't think she could get through this. She's not here either, but you'll see why in a moment. These are Sam's words. Many of you may have noticed that I'm not here today in the church. Unfortunately, I tested positive for COVID earlier this week. However, I'm in a good place watching this via live stream with some of the most caring and amazing people in my life, outside of my family, and I'm beyond thankful for their support. I'm in a good place, and there's not strong enough words to express how much my friends mean to me. I will be at the cemetery for the burial with a mask on, and I will socially distance myself, so please keep your distance, even though I'd love a hug. Right now, I'm imagining my father shaking his head and looking at me with his raised eyebrows like he did so many times when I did or said something absurd just to irritate him. I joked with my mom yesterday about how much I love to push his buttons, and this is the last button I'm going to push. I knew this day would eventually come, and although I have sadness, I am also thankful for the number of years that I spent with my dad. I know he was loved by many, and the support our family has received is insurmountable. I could spend my time talking in detail about what my father did during his lifetime, such as serving our country in the Air Force during Vietnam. I could also talk about my father, how my father had a keen sense of community and civic duty by being a volunteer firefighter, a fire engineer, or a Pine Grove cemetery steward. Lastly, I could talk about how my father has an extraordinary strong work ethic, holding multiple jobs in his lifetime to support his family, like bus driver, ski shop owner, food service manager at Gunstock, and of course, owner of Sawyer's Dairy Bar. But I'm not going to do that today. Instead, I would like to share special experiences with my dad. In addition to being a very hard worker, my father also was a very funny man with quick wit. One such example that reminds me of that is when I recently read Peter Wright's comments in the obituary guest book. He said, one of the things Peter said when asked if he was a millionaire was, "Yes, but I have a brother." My father was a man with few words, but when he did speak, everyone listened, especially at Sawyer's Dairy Bar when he was barking out orders on a busy Friday night. So many amazing people that worked at the restaurant have reached out to me in the past week, and the comments were quite similar. One such comment from Kim Cody said it best. She said, "I loved it when he was behind the grill. He was all business, nothing could faze him, but the best was when he would shoot you a coy smile to remind you that he was a big teddy bear." Dad's favorite pastime was to just listen and watch people. However, it is not what he said, but what he did. When I first went to college in Providence, Rhode Island, soon after starting classes, I received a letter addressed to me in my father's near-perfect penmanship. I could not believe that my father took the time to write me a letter, and I was so excited to see what he had written. I proceeded to open the envelope, and in it found, wrapped in a blank piece of paper, a $20 bill. So me being my father's daughter, I called my dad and told him how much I appreciated the letter he sent, and I could not believe that he spent so much time writing such a long letter. He said, "Yes, daughter, I will do better next time." The following week, I received another envelope with his perfect writing. To my surprise, when I opened the envelope, there was another $20 bill with 2 to 3 cartoons from the paper. Each cartoon had either a family member's name or pet's name over their heads. I received those comics once a week for the next 4 years. I would say, this is not Sam, but he did the same thing to me. Out of the blue, I started receiving these envelopes with cartoons. It was odd, but it was nice because he knew he was thinking of you. And he was not a warm and fuzzy person. He would not come up and hug you necessarily, but he showed his love for you in unique ways. Back to Sam. Today I have an amazing photo album stuffed with so many cartoons, and I know that every single one of those cartoons said, "I love you." Let me share one more story. Many years ago, my father and I were out at breakfast during early spring, and we had grabbed the Laconia Daily Sun. On the cover was a picture of a bird with the tagline, "A harbinger of spring." I looked at my dad and said, "Harbinger? I never heard of harbinger bird before. Have you, Dad?" He looked at me with a raised eyebrow and said, "You're joking, right?" I looked again at the bird and immediately realized my mistake. The bird was a robin, and then remembered that a robin is a sign of spring. My immediate response was to tell him it was his fault because he did not send me to private school, and therefore I lacked proper education. But in the future, when you see a robin, please think of my dad and laugh, because that is what I plan to do. In closing, I want to thank my family, friends, and everyone else that has reached out during this sad time. My father loved his family and friends so much. Let us celebrate, and I hope that all of you will have the opportunity to share some remarkable stories, because my father was someone that lived a great life. I love you, Dad.
And would anyone care to share a story? Someone's got to be the brave first person. Come on. Or I'll just hand the microphone to someone.
My name is Greg LeMay, and Peter's dad, George, was our milkman. So that's how, in fact, our families went together. My dad and his dad were great friends. I'd come upon tough times in my tire business, and I was actually in Nashua, going to Nashua, selling tires over the phone and delivering tires. I bumped into Peter. He said, "Hey, have you got any tires for a Corvette?" I said, "Yeah, I could probably find some tires for a Corvette." He said, "Used ones." I said, "Okay, I can probably find some used tires." And sure enough, I found a good set of 4 used tires, and he helped me out when I was in most in need for a little bit of income by buying 4 and he loved his Corvettes. Those of you remember, I think blue was the color he liked, but anyway. And I also was one of his first customers in the ski shop. I outfitted myself with a full set. I was in college at the time. I got a full set of ski equipment for the ski team that I was racing for. So those are a couple of experiences I had with Peter. He and I always had a lot of fun and good jokes together.
Who else?
I figured I'd share going off of what Jim said, that Uncle Pete was not necessarily somebody that, showed a ton of emotion and kindness, and obviously he wouldn't come up and hug you or anything like that, but one thing where I'd say all of us grandchildren felt very loved was at camp. He worked incredibly hard to upkeep it so that we could enjoy it, and one thing that he did was, on the property, he created walkways that were named after all of us grandchildren. So I think I speak for all the grandchildren when I say that we definitely felt very loved when we got to walk there and see our names on these little posts that he made for us.
That's great. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Jim McShane. I just live here in Guildford. Remember many years ago, my wife Judy was selling Peter's house, and I got a call from Judy, and she says, "Peter said, do you want any Sawyer cups? The dairy bar cups?" I said, "Sure, yeah." Nobody's making them anymore, right? So I got home from work, and there was 5 giant boxes in my driveway. Each box, there was 500 Sawyer's cups. 2,500 Sawyer's cups. What the hell am I going to do with these? So I put them in the basement, forgot about them for a wee while. Then I was at some dairy place, and I got a frap or something. I was drinking. I went, my God, that thing stayed cold for a long time. wonder if the Sawyer's Cups can keep beer that cold for a long time. So I went downstairs, poured myself a Sawyer's Cup, put beer in it, and by God, it was great. And I only drink beer from Sawyer's Cups now, right? I actually take them to Europe with me, Sawyer's Cups. I go to Scotland, last time I was there 5 years, and they all know when they come over here, they have Sawyer Cups with beer. So I get there, Glasgow Airport, I'm like, hi, they go, did you bring the Sawyer's Cups? I go through the customs in Spain one time, and the guy's going through my bag, and he brings out a Sawyer's Cup. He's like, Sawyer's Dairy Bar. I says, I know what you're thinking, but you're not getting it, put it back. So now that Peter's gone, when I drink my beer, I've only got 250 left, by the way. I'm down to the last 250. I'll always remember Peter when I have my next beer out the Sawyer's Cup.
So 250, that's just a couple of weeks, right? Who's next?
Thank you. My name's Greg Goddard. I've known Pete since I was a small child, and grew up going to Sawyer's Dairy Bar, and when I graduated from college, I happened to stop in there one afternoon, and Peter asked me what I was planning on doing with my life after college. And I said, honestly, Pete, I have no idea what I'm going to do. And he said, well, if you need something to do for the winter, just come on up. You can tend bar for me at Gunstock this winter. And I tended bar for him that winter. He coached me through becoming the food and beverage manager and a number of other jobs at Gunstock, and I stayed there for the next 39 and a half years. But that's not the story I wanted to tell. The story I actually wanted to issue an apology to some of the Sawyer family members, household members, especially the kids, for the toga party that we had at the barn. We used to have little celebrations after the Gunstock season, and this one in particular, Bear decided that he wanted to have a toga party. So nobody showed up in a toga. So that wasn't really acceptable, and after a few rounds of drinks, we decided that we probably ought to go ahead and have a toga party. So I remember my wife, I remember Karen Babotis and a few other people started scouring every linen closet and every bedroom in the Sawyer household, pulling all of the sheets and pillowcases off the beds, dragging people into a back room and outfitting them with all of their individual togas, including for some of the ladies, those long pillowcases. They just cut the arms out and a little scoop in the top and put those over the top, and we had one heck of a toga party, and I'll never forget that as long as I live, so apologies to the Sawyers for wrecking all their sheets.
Who's next?
Good afternoon. My name's Frank Latosic. I'm a victim of Peter Sawyer being towed along in a tube. Peter had this game that he loved to play. He would always make a thought of, let's go get a beer. You get in the tube and we'll go for a ride. It'll be quick. Next thing you know, we're up in Meredith. We've hit about 4 markers, been thrown out of the tube. Every time he threw you out of that tube, he could sweetheart talk you back into that thing. And once he did, he made sure you hit another marker and you'd get launched again. And there he goes. And he never laughed so hard. And then when, of course, after we'd had a couple of beers, what would Peter say? Time to get back in the tube. We got to go back to camp. Sure as hell. Oh, sorry, Rev. Sure as heck, we'd get back in the tube. And you know what happens from here to there. It'd be another 4 or 5 times you'd be there and you'd find your bathing suit. Sorry, Rev. And Peter just loved that. He took more people out in the tube. And I swear that was probably one of the best times we ever had tubing with Pete.
Anyone else? And we don't really care if you say hell or not, so. Other words, like, give me an example.
My name's Fred Warnick. Pete was a neighbor for 30 years. Always. they went and saw him 3 nights before he died. Talked for 45 minutes. And I said, okay, I'm going to go, Pete. I'll come back next week. He died Monday. But the last thing he said to me before I was leaving, he said, Fred, come here. I leaned over and I said, what? He said, I just effing farted for you. That's Pete Sawyer.
Anyone else? I'll, in the spirit of that, the man who farts in church sits in his own pew. Well, on behalf of Sally and the Sawyer family, I thank you not only for your joyful presence here today, but for all the love and support that you've shown the family and Peter over this tough stretch. You are invited down to our fellowship hall for some refreshments. We're going to take the picture in a few moments, and the committal service will be at Pine Grove at 4 o'clock. But I think this would be an appropriate benediction. If I should go before the rest of you, break not a flower, nor inscribe a stone, nor when I'm gone speak in a Sunday voice, but be the usual selves I've known and loved. Weep if you must, parting is hell, but life goes on, so sing and dance as well. Amen. And now if you do have that colorful Hawaiian shirt on, come forward as we play a final song. I was told if you don't have a Hawaiian shirt on but want to take your shirt off, you can come on up too.